in the mood to do something silly and kind of pointless and just fun today. So, join me on my stump. You can't really see the stump, but I'm sitting on my stump, and let's rank every live musical I've ever seen. I am a massive fan of live theater, particularly live musical theater. It is what I chose to go to college for, and I worked in theater a bit. I did some work at a regional theater after college, and then I worked on cruise ships, which was kind of theater. It counts, it's theater. But it's been a while since I worked in theater. However, I do like to also just go see shows. Not something I do as frequently here in LA, just because the theater scene in LA is not hugely prolific. We get the touring shows, but I think as far as live performances go in LA, it's more stand-up comedy and music, I guess. Musical performances, bands, stuff like that. That feels like the more common thing to go watch live in LA. And there are some theaters. I'm getting off track. None of this matters. Can you tell I had zero plan going into this? Not zero. I had a tiny bit of a plan. But yeah, I've seen a fair amount of live theater in my time, whether in New York, in London, or on tour starting back when I was a kid in Dallas. They had the Dallas Summer Musicals that came through, which is what originally sparked my love of musical theater in the first place. So I just thought it would be kind of fun to look back at every show that I've seen live, the musical shows in particular, and rank them. Kinda just wanted to revisit some memories, you know? And I don't even particularly remember every show that I've seen live, so, oh god, this is so heavy. Paraphernalia! Oh dear. Oh no, this was a terrible idea. I lost a mic somewhere. Stage manager, assistant stage manager checklist. This is not part of these. I think this is from college. All right, so we got the big show books in here, which I do like to buy every single time I go to see a show if I can. And then this is all the playbills, but I briefly flicked through this and it feels like I'm missing several, which might be because actually a pretty high number of the live musicals that I've seen were from West End or on West End rather than on Broadway. Hi, baby! Visitations! Oh, you're so stinky! Mwah. But I love you. I really like West End. Technically, I like it even better than Broadway. But they don't do playbills there. They do smaller programs, which I think you still have to purchase. Anyway, it's a whole thing. So, ranking. This is the tiny bit of a plan I made ahead of time. I've created my own categories because of course I have. That's how we rank things now. Just 4. Starting at the top, life-changing, because yes. Number 2 is always a good time. Number 3 is interesting. I feel like these are self-explanatory, but I'll probably get into it more later. Number 4 at the bottom is oh dear. And then like I said, we're just ranking the musicals technically, or at least we're just gonna focus on the musicals, but I have seen several straight plays as well. So those are gonna get miniature speedy rankings on a separate list. And it's just 2 categories, ooh, or okay, let's do it. In theory, these playbills are all in order up to a certain point, in theory. First musical I ever saw live was The Lion King. And I'll get right to it, this goes into life-changing. Here's the thing, I have seen The Lion King musical more than once, and I am going to rank all of them separately. The first time was absolutely life-changing because I had never seen a live musical before that. I didn't know what it was like. I cried through the entire Circle of Life opening because all of the puppetry and the rock on the stage and the sun coming up and the dancers and the performers and the singers, I just had no idea that theater could be that extreme and incredible and creative. Yeah, and I was like 14 years old. A friend took me because they had season tickets for Dallas Summer Musicals, but the rest of her family didn't really want to go, so it was just her mom and her, and she was like, hey, do you want to come see The Lion King? And I was like, yeah. I was actually sick. I had like a cold, and I'd been laying on the couch sniffling all day long, but I absolutely refused to not go. So my nose was already running, and then I cried on top of that very heavily. I think I had stuffed like 4 Kleenexes into my little purse that I brought with me, and I ran through those like by the end of Circle of Life, and then continually cried throughout the rest of the show too. I cry really easily from being moved rather than necessarily being sad. I cry when I'm sad too. But like when I feel moved, tears immediately, and that's been my entire life. So absolutely my first time seeing The Lion King musical live in the flesh, straight up life-changing. One of the immediate things that it changed in my life is that I started paying attention to what musicals were coming on tour through Dallas Summer Musicals, and I started saving up all my little teenager allowance and babysitting money so that I could buy tickets to musicals. That became like my main priority. And of course, we were still in a place where like my parents were extremely picky about what we were allowed to see. I had to go to the family-friendly ones, but I got my siblings interested as well, my older sisters, and we would go as like sister groups to go watch musicals together, which we had never done before that, and it was so much fun. And the very first one that we went to see as a sister group was Cats. This show has so many people have opinions on this show. It's like either a love it or hate it kind of show, only most people hate it, especially ever since the movie came out, because a lot of people who have never actually seen the live show have just watched the movie and been scarred by that. I actually have not seen the movie. I don't want to be scarred by it. But I've watched plenty of people talk about it on YouTube. So I had no idea what we were getting into when we saw this. And I remember the 4 of us or 3 of us who saw it leaving afterward and being like, so what was that? And you know what? Kudos to my sisters for wanting to go to more musicals after this being their first one they saw, because we were very confused. But we were confused about the storyline, or the lack thereof, about where this idea came from, which, if you don't know, is a collection of cute little poems for kids. I actually have it over here somewhere. But all of the girls in our family had grown up dancing. We grew up taking ballet, and this is an extremely dance-heavy show. So despite the fact that we were all like, what the crap did we just see, we all still, I think, really enjoyed it because it was very beautiful. It's a beautiful performance to see live. It should never have been made into a movie. A pro shot, yes, I did watch the pro shot. I think probably a couple months after seeing it live because I was curious. That's fine, but it should not have been made into a movie. The whole joy of this show is the dancing and the singing and the people embodying cat-like movements on stage. It's not supposed to be CGI'd. Anyway, enough of that rant. Where do I rank this? You know what? Because I'm doing it according to the actual performance I watched and the effect that it had on me at the time, and not like the show as a whole, I think it also has to go in life-changing. Cats was my favorite musical for quite a while. In college, in a design class, I completely designed the set, costumes, and makeup for a production of Cats, which the set was hard for me. I already did like costume design a lot, but I designed this whole set where it was like under railroad tracks. It's hard to try to do something different with Cats, but I felt like I did, and I felt like it was really fun. And it was hilarious because our theater teacher was in the camp of absolutely hating cats. So you know what? Cats goes in life-changing. Oh, and there's Fiddler on the Roof. Much more typical for us. We had seen the movie, of course, so, you know, it has a storyline. Woohoo! I'm gonna have to throw this one in Always a Good Time, because I remember having a good time, but I don't remember much beyond that. Actually, now that I'm sitting here thinking of it, I'm getting like flashes of the stage in memory, like how they did certain scenes. Always a Good Time. Fiddler on the Roof is a great show. And then Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Can you see I'm going to like all the family-friendly shows here? I remember a chorus line came through one year and my dad actually knew it. I think he had maybe played, because my dad was a musician before he married my mom. So I think he had actually played in the pit for a chorus line at one point and he was like, no, you cannot go see that show. Anyway, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, another one that like we had seen the movie, cute show. I've forgotten what my rankings are. Oh yeah, okay. I am gonna have to put this one in interesting. They did have the car, the full-sized car that flew on stage, but it was one of those shows where that was kind of the only standout feature, and they maybe are kind of relying on their one big set thing to cover up the fact that the rest of the show is a little weak, perhaps. And then here it is, we went to see Lion King again. Lion King goes on tour so much. I'm pretty sure at that point it was hitting Dallas basically every other year. So this was like 2 years later and it came again and I was like, I need all of my sisters to go see this show because it was life-changing, right? Life-changing. The second one goes in, always a good time. It was a good time. It was a great time to go see it with my sisters. We had fun. I was lightly annoyed because in the Can You Feel the Love Tonight sequence, the first time I saw the show, and I've started to question whether I made up this memory, but I swear it's correct, they had aerial performers dancing on silks or wires or something during that number, and every time I have seen it since, those have not existed anymore. And as someone who would not realize that she was super into aerial arts for another, like, 3 years, I was disappointed to see them cut. But still, always a good time. Oh, this was an interesting one. Little House on the Prairie, the musical. Yeah, this is a thing that happened. Here's what I remember from this show. The actress who played Laura Ingalls in the TV series played Caroline Ingalls, the mom, on the Broadway show. Fun little stunt casting thing there. Which, okay, but she wasn't a singer. So it was one of those stunt casting where you were like, oh, was this worth it? I can remember one part of this show, and it was a scene where Laura and Almanzo, I think is the guy she marries, are like riding home in a buggy, and she had a song while she was like riding the buggy, and I just remember the way they did the reins like attached to the edge of the stage to like signify movement and everything, and I thought it was a clever use of stage design at that time. This is gonna go in, oh dear, because it didn't have much going for it at all. Okay, this one was interesting. The Little Mermaid. So Disney did The Little Mermaid on Broadway. It ran for a couple years and then closed because it was not making much money. They had all of the mermaids on like the wheelie shoes with tails that came out of their butts and were held up on wires. So they would like wheelie around the stage to look like they were floating. Honestly, at the time, as a teenager watching clips of this online, because I was now absolutely obsessed with theater, I thought it was a really clever choice. Most people in the world of critiquing theater thought it was the dumbest thing they'd ever seen. So I think what happened is after that closed on Broadway, they like partnered specifically with Dallas Summer Musicals to create a tour. I don't really have much info on how this happened, but it was some way partnered with them because there were like local kids who made up the ensemble and they redid the whole design of it to be way cheaper. I was mostly annoyed, not that they took away the wheelies and the weird tail things. I was like, fair enough, that was kind of weird. But they changed the Ursula design. A lot of Disney musicals, like The Lion King, are very much coming from the movie, but have some sort of creative take on it where they're not just copying all of the original movie designs. And in the Broadway version, they created this entirely new design for Ursula that I thought was so stunning on stage. Gorgeous. When they redid it for this tour or for this Dallas location thing, whatever it was, they really just did an imitation of the movie Ursula. And I was like, okay. They also, which I'm sure this was for logistical reasons, had Sebastian played by an adult when they did it here, whereas on Broadway he was actually played by a group of children, switching out as they always do, which, like, I wouldn't have cared about, except that they wrote the songs where Sebastian sings for a child's voice. And then when an adult had to sing them, it did not sound right. It had not, it didn't work. I'm gonna throw this one in Always a Good Time, because it's still just such a fun show. The music that they wrote for this is a blast. If you've never listened to the soundtrack, highly recommend. Mary Poppins! Another Disney Broadway. We're still in the family-friendly realm here. I'm still in high school at this point, and we're still in Dallas. It was great to see Mary Poppins on Broadway. It is such a good show. It's another one that Disney did, but like didn't actually last that long on Broadway, unfortunately. This is one that you see like high schools and colleges and community theaters. They do Mary Poppins all the time now. I think my sister was in it at one point at a community theater. It's such a fun show. I love Mary Poppins. I love the movie. Always a good time. Ooh, we're getting into slightly more adultish shows now. The Phantom of the Opera. I'd kind of forgotten that I've seen this one on tour, because this is another one that I have now seen multiple times. I think I've seen it in London and New York, and obviously in Dallas. We had seen the movie by this point. I definitely saw the Phantom of the Opera movie and liked it a whole lot more than most theater nerds did, because I didn't have anything to compare it to. I just thought it was great. You'd think this would be life-changing, but the thing is, I don't remember watching it in Dallas very well. Like, obviously I remember the show quite well because I've now seen it multiple times, and it's pretty much exactly the same every place you see it. But I don't have a strong memory of watching this when I was in high school, so it's gonna have to go in Always a Good Time. Irving Berlin's White Christmas, the musical. This movie, White Christmas, was very much like an important family movie, an important sister movie that we would watch every single year. So we were super excited to see that there was a live musical performance of it. I remember it being cute, really fun, always a good time. That is where most of these are gonna end up, you know. Da 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 da, here we go. I got to see Wicked. Oh, I have 2 playbills. Did I see this twice when it toured? Actually, I'm having a slight memory recall that I did. I'm gonna rank them together because sure. I had to convince my parents to let me see this one. Not because they knew anything about the show, they didn't bother looking it up, but simply because it was called Wicked. They were like, oh, that seems like it's going to be sinful in some way, and maybe you shouldn't see it. And I had to like give them the whole spiel about like, no, here's what it's about, blah, 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 and it's just because she's called the Wicked Witch of the West and blah, 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 blah. And they succumbed, and they let me go watch it. Huzzah! And you know what? I will say life-changing, but for an interesting reason. I do remember sitting in the audience watching this show, and for the first time, noticing all the technical elements. Not necessarily the costumes, because I think I've always noticed the costumes, and even like the staging and stuff, like I said for Little House on the Prairie, like I think I was already paying attention to how things were staged and stuff like that. But I specifically remember watching lighting changes at certain points in this show, and I remember mentioning it to my sisters afterward and being like, did you see how like the pink lighting faded to green at this point because it was supposed to signify blah 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 blah, and they were like, no. So I would say life-changing for this, because I think this was the beginning of me being interested in theater in a more well-rounded, or like in a more technical way, like being more interested in theater as an art form with all of these different elements to it, rather than in theater as a performance, if that makes sense. Y'all, we are still in Dallas. I watched a lot of shows in high school. The Wizard of Oz. I have to immediately put this in oh dear, because I just remember it being not good. Like, technically speaking, not good. I remember there being microphone issues where like there was feedback, and then like people's mics didn't turn on at the right time. I don't remember there being any standout good elements to it, and I recall most of the voices, the singing, the performers not being like great or anything, and it was kind of like, okay, oh dear. Oh, this was an interesting one. 101 Dalmatians, the musical. Another one that's like, yeah, they did that. Okay, here's the thing with this show. Such an interesting choice. You have the dogs and you have the humans, right? The dogs are played by people because, you know, this can't be a thing where there's an actual dog. The dogs are the main characters of the story. They need to sing and stuff. So how do you differentiate between the people playing dogs and the people playing the people? Have you come up with an answer? I'll tell you how they decided to do it. It's by having the humans on stilts. Very interesting choice. I also recall there being so many like, this is for the adults in the room jokes in this show. I was old enough to get them at this point. I was like 17 or something. But I just remember the two henchmen at one point walking by, and one of them kept like going like, we should stop doing this, like, let's go to the beach instead. And the other one was like, that's all I ever get from you is beach, beach, beach. A joke for the adults. But you know what? This is going in interesting because they made some really creative, interesting choices. Was it good? No, not really. But it was interesting. Oh yeah, this was the first one that was a little different. We're still in Dallas, but Les Miserables came to like it was the place where like operas and ballets happened, I think, rather than the music hall where most Broadways came. So, you know, we were just like going to a different place and it was all fancy and stuff. Always a good time. I don't recall it being super life-changing to me, although this probably was the most adult show that I'd seen at that time. You know, we have straight up like prostitutes and penis jokes. It's a great show. It makes me cry. Yo, we're out of Dallas. Dun dun dun. And jumping way far ahead. Was this actually the next show I saw? No, it wasn't, because here's where there's a break. The next place that I saw shows, other than like the shows I was working on in college and everything in regional theater, was London, wasn't it? Because like the entire time that I was in college for theater, I don't think I ever went and saw anything more than like community theater performances. You'd think that like as a theater program that would have been more built in to have us like travel and go. There was a point where a few students did this whole like weekend or week-long thing in New York, but they were students who excelled at the performance side of theater, and I was not one of them. I did not excel. What did I see my first time in London? I know I went to see Phantom of the Opera again. I think that was like a last-minute decision when I like walked past the theater and I was like, I'm pretty sure I could get a day of ticket for that. And I could. And you know what? The only other thing I remember watching was a play version of 1984, which if we're putting it in my ooh or I'm gonna throw it in because that's interesting to see in play form, which is clearly why it lodged in my head. Do I really not remember what else I saw? Ooh, wait, this is another straight play, but I saw The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which definitely goes in ooh. That was an incredible show. I'm not all that surprised that I didn't like buy programs because the first time I was in London, I had been traveling for like 4 months. And I was extremely low, both on money and on space. I don't know, I feel like I had to have seen some musical besides just Phantom of the Opera. My memories of that time are weirdly low. Not that weirdly. It's not that surprising that my memories are pretty low of that time. It had been a long 4 months. Did I see Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? I saw that at some point, and it was in London. No Man's Land with, it was Ian McKellen and the other guy together in this play, No Man's Land. I'm gonna throw it in even though I'm not a huge fan of Harold Pinter plays, but just for getting to see that cast live, that was great. Moving on to the first time that I ever went to New York. This was a trip that Matt and I took together right before we moved to Florida, right after we got off of cruise ships. We saw Aladdin. I'm gonna say always a good time. It is such an energetic, bright show. There was nothing about it that was like, oh my god, incredible. It wasn't like as creatively done as The Lion King or even as Little Mermaid, but it's still just such a fun show. Oh, and then this one. Okay, we saw Once on This Island, Circle in the Square. So it is a, God, I'm losing all my words. An arena theater. The seats go all the way around, and it's a pretty small one too. I did not really know anything about this show, and I'm so glad we went to see it. Apparently there's a movie in the works of this version, but I feel like I haven't heard anything about it in a really long time. We had seats that were like halfway up this like the riser of seats. We're sitting there before the show. It's really cool. They had this whole pre-show thing, like the set is all open, the actors were walking around in character and everything. And the way you enter the theater is like on the level where we were. We were in like the first seats on that level, and then you actually have to go downstairs for the whole first group of seats. So this couple came in, and I think the gentleman was, he was using a walker, I believe, something that would have made stairs very hard for him. And like they were standing there for a minute, they were right next to us, they were looking around, they started talking to an usher, and basically they had front row seats. But front row seats were down the stairs and they literally couldn't access them. And just because Matt and I happened to be sitting right there, the usher like turned to us and was like, hey, do you want to switch seats with these people? They're fine with sitting up here. Their original seats are down there. And I was like, do we want front row seats? Yes. So yeah, we got front row seats at this show. And y'all, life-changing. This might be my favorite show that I have ever seen live because of the combo of everything. Like, the staging was just incredible. The music, the score, the people singing it, incredible. The band, the way they sounded, the way they were set up, incredible. It was just stunning in every single way. I was floored and on the floor the whole time. It very much took me back to the feeling of watching Circle of Life performed live with all of these puppets in front of me when I was 14. It was like the first show after Lion King where I had that same experience of being like, oh my god, this is theater. This is what you can do. Incredible show. I'm so glad we got to see it. Ow, my legs are hurting. Oh look, and here is round 3 of Phantom of the Opera in New York this time. Always a good time. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, Part 1. Where's my Part 2 part? I don't know. We definitely went to see Part 2 as well. This is not a musical, so this would fall under the category of ooh or I will give it an ooh for all of the like magic effects, the practical effects they used to do the magic throughout the show and stuff. It was very interestingly done. Obviously, at this point in my life, I would no longer go to see this show. Anastasia at Dr. Phillips Center. So we had now moved to Florida, and this would have been the touring production of Anastasia. I was honestly really disappointed in the set design and the effects for this show because it was basically projection. And it's like, I get that when you're touring, that's probably so much easier to bring around with you than a bunch of actual set pieces, but it was just like, okay, I don't know, when you see really cool projection, I feel like it's cool for like 5 minutes. And then when the entire rest of the show is just more projection, you're like, okay, I've seen that now. I'm no longer impressed. I want to say always a good time. I want to say interesting, but it wasn't interesting. They didn't make interesting choices. And I feel like I can't even put it in always a good time because I was just kind of like, this could have been so much better. And I don't necessarily mean the performers or the performances or even the music. I just mean like the staging of the whole show. I love Anastasia. Anastasia is one of the shows that like I always thought about like, what would you do if you were doing an Anastasia live on stage? And it was just kind of disappointing to see it done pretty blandly, in my opinion. So it goes in oh dear. But now we're back in New York. This would have been when we went to New York to look for an apartment because we were gonna move to New York. Of course, we had to see some more shows while we were there. We saw Tina the Tina Turner musical. Which, you know what? I'm gonna throw in Always a Good Time. I'm not a big, like, biopic musical lover or jukebox musical lover. I think they do better as movies. But I will say, this wasn't even, it wasn't like the girl, what am I saying? It was the stand-in doing the lead role. And you know what? She frickin' killed it. She was so good. Just for that, I'm gonna give it Always a Good Time, because her performance was incredible. Then we went to see Frozen, specifically because a guy I went to college with was playing Olaf at the time. So that was really cool. I had never seen anybody that I know in like a Broadway play, so it was really cool to see that. Also, Frozen was done really well. Again, it wasn't like as interesting of creative choices as Lion King. That's kind of the unfortunate thing with Disney on Broadway, is they started out really strong with like, how can we do stuff that's different? How can we really like explore the medium that is theater instead of just trying to kind of replicate our movies on stage? And they kind of moved away from that. That being said, the costumes were beautiful, the singing was great, the quick change was, of course, incredibly impressive, so always a good time. Then we are on to the last time we were in New York, because the entire year that we lived in New York, we did not see one single show because they were all closed because it was 2020. So the next time I went to New York was just last year for Thanksgiving. Matt and I went and we saw The Lion King again. I guess this was my first time seeing it on Broadway because the other 2 times were on tour and Matt had never seen it. So I was like, sure, let's go see it. Always a good time. Then we went to see Hadestown. Oh, y'all, good show. Here's the thing. I almost went to see Hadestown when I was in New York years before that, while we were living in Florida. I went to New York for a workshop thing for casting, back when I was gonna go into casting as a career. While I was there, I seriously considered going to see Hadestown, which at that time had kind of just opened. It was still very new. And at one point, one of the presenters at the workshop was talking to somebody else and I overheard her say, oh yeah, I went to see Hadestown. It was kind of slow and boring. And y'all, I let that like pass along bit of opinion from somebody I didn't even know influence my opinion of this show that I hadn't even seen, which is just such a clear and terrible reflection of how often we do that as humans. We let like something so random influence our opinion of something. In that time, I chose not to go see Hadestown. And then the next time we were in New York, I was like, meh, let's not go see Hadestown. And it wasn't like a conscious thing in my brain of me being like, well, that random person said it was boring, so I'm not gonna go see it. But it was definitely subconsciously the reason. And then yeah, we finally went to go see it, and it was stunning. I'm gonna throw it up there in life-changing because it wasn't quite my first time seeing Lion King or Once on This Island, but it was definitely pretty close to that. It is such a beautiful show. What else have we gotten here? Oh, these are some that we've actually seen here in LA. So we went to see Company when it came on tour through here. This is the new version where they gender swapped the lead role and a couple of the other roles. It was super fun. I'm gonna throw it in Always a Good Time, but here's the thing. Company is one of my favorite musicals. It is so good. The music is incredible. The way it's done is incredible. But here's why it's my favorite musical. It's not just from listening to the album. It's because there is a version of this with, what's his name? I think his first name is Raoul something. I don't know. There was a pro shot taken of this version that is done so well and so interestingly. I've watched another version where Neil Patrick Harris played the lead and I was like, nah, okay. But this one, the cast members stay on stage like the whole time. The cast members all play instruments throughout the entire show. The way that it's staged is just so interesting, and the performance that the lead guy gives is like my favorite performance of this role. So I was a little bit biased going in to see it this time and see it gender swapped. I thought the staging was really cool. I thought everything about it was really good, but like the music itself, I was just like, I'm so biased. I prefer it in the original voices. Like, you know, they have to like transpose songs when they're going to transfer it from a male voice to a female voice or vice versa. And it just, it didn't like hit me in the soul the same way, most of those transposed songs, but it still was very, very fun. A good time. We saw Clue live on stage. Matt hated it. He did not get the sense of humor whatsoever, and he was like, what the crap was that? I thought it was funny though, because I've seen the original Clue movie, so it goes in, ooh. And then Once Upon a Mattress with Sutton Foster and a bunch of other famous people. Michael Urie was in it. What's her name? I want to say Catherine Hahn, but it's not Catherine Hahn. Oh yeah, Amy Sherman Palladino did the adaptation. Anna Gasteyer. Gasteyer is how you say it? Anyway, lots of really great performers in here. This is kind of a weird and a little bit dumb of a show, Once Upon a Mattress. The way that they did it, or I should say, it worked with Sutton Foster. It needs a Sutton Foster playing the lead, because without that, you're kind of like, what the crap is this show? She is one of my favorite performers. She is so funny and so naturally funny and effortlessly funny. She's got like Lucille Ball levels of like physical comedy, but also like this very sharp wit. I was so disappointed. One, when Bunheads was canceled. Bunheads was such a good show, and it was written so well. Guess who wrote Bunheads? Amy Sherman Palladino, who also is the person who created Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And she writes in that quick, sharp, witty style, and it works so well for Sutton Foster. So Bunheads was incredible. Such a good show, especially because I like dance. And then it got freaking canceled. And then Sutton Foster was in that show Younger, and I was like, oh my god, I love Sutton Foster, so great, she got like the lead in another show, I'm gonna watch this. Y'all, it was so bad. And I don't mean bad like the whole show was bad. Like if you like that kind of show, it was probably fine for you. But bad as in like, it felt like no one who was writing on that show knew how to utilize the talent that they had. It just did not utilize Sutton Foster's talents at all. And I stopped watching it like season 2 because I couldn't stand it anymore. So maybe they eventually did later on. But I just thought it was so disappointing. I was like, she's so comedic. I mean, it didn't utilize her singing and dancing either, which like, fine, fair enough. But they did not utilize her wit and her comedy and her sarcasm and all of this in the writing. And I was just like, what was the point of casting somebody this talented in a role where you're not going to use their talents? Anyway, that's my rant on this. I'm gonna throw this one in. Always a good time, because the show was so much fun with Sutton Foster in it. That's everything in this book. What else have I seen recently? Okay, now we've got some London stuff from the last 2 times I went, when I was able to get souvenirs, because I had both more disposable income and suitcase space. Next to Normal. Ha! Y'all, this show. I had watched not even a pro shot. I think it was an illegal recording of, I believe, the original Next to Normal with Aaron Tveit. So I had seen the show. I was very familiar with the music. This is one of the albums that I've been listening to since like high school, crying at constantly. It was so good to actually see it live in person. And the cast, first of all, Cassie Levy, or is it Levi? I think it's Levy. Second of all, Jack Wolf, and everyone else as well. They were all incredible. I thought the way that they modernized the script a little bit was incredible. They didn't really change it at all. They literally had like one change at the end that made like a big change in the overall message of the show. I can't really explain it further than that. Such a good show. I'm so glad I saw it live. I was in London by myself when I did this, so I saw this by myself. And I cried so hard through the whole thing. I think I possibly freaked out the guy sitting next to me. Sorry to him. I'm gonna throw this in life-changing, because the whole show, incredible. The play that goes wrong. This is not a musical, this is a play. It goes in, ooh. This was so much fun to see, just because the audience was in hysterics the whole time. It is so fun to go see a comedic show that the whole audience finds funny, and the whole audience is just in it and having a great time, and that was this show, if you ever get a chance to see it. It's hilarious. The Taming of the Shrew, this goes in, I really wanted to see a show at the Globe. It's something that I didn't get to do the first time that I went to London. This was an interesting production. People keep doing The Taming of the Shrew, and I don't fully know why. We don't have to keep doing it. We don't have to keep trying to like twist it into having a better message. We could just stop performing it, you know. There's other options. And then this is from our last trip to London, which was last year. Matt was on tour, so I went to join him for a little bit. We got to see Mamma Mia together. I had never seen Mamma Mia live, and so I was like, sure, let's go see it. It doesn't quite make it into Always a Good Time, in my opinion, because again, like the staging was kind of boring, and I feel like if somebody revived it now, instead of it just like having been on stage for so long, they could do something a little bit more interesting. But also it's definitely not interesting, and it's definitely not oh dear. It's a fun time. It's a fun show. It also explained to me a lot of the stuff that's in the movie. Like why the guys in flippers dancing during that song, because that was the choreography in the original musical. Why at the end of the movie does she go, "One more time," and they sing a whole thing during the credits? Because that's what they do in the musical. We'll say Always a Good Time. We went to see Back to the Future, the musical. Yeah, this is gonna have to go in, oh dear. The music was very forgettable. It was another one of those where it felt like they were like, look, the car, it's here, the car. And I was like, okay, but could you back up your cool set piece with like a better story and music, please? 6. Went to see 6 finally. I haven't seen it before this. Another one where the audience was so into it, and that made it such a good time. I think if I was watching this in a vacuum live, I probably would be like, meh. But because everyone in the audience was having such a freaking good time, it was so enjoyable to watch. So, Always a Good Time. The music is really good. And then this one's a play, but I went to see Mrs. Warren's Profession, which has the mother-daughter duo performing as a mother-daughter duo. What are their names? It's the girl from Bridgerton, Imelda Staunton and Bessie Carter. They're mother-daughter in real life. I'm not sure if everybody knows that. But yeah, it was really cool to see them together. It's a play I think I'd already read, and it's not really one of my favorites. I'm not a big Bernard Shaw fan, but I will still put it in, because it was really cool to see them perform together. I feel like there's some missing here. I feel like there are shows I've seen that was not in that group of playbills and programs and stuff. But you know what? What you gonna do? This is why I buy playbills and programs, because my memory, whoosh, it fails me. Anyway, thanks for letting me wax nostalgic and get excited about live theater. It's actually been a hot second since I've been to see anything. I guess the last ones that I saw were London last year. So I should go see some more live theater. If you've never seen a live show before, highly recommend seeing what's coming on tour near you, or even going to see like a community theater or a regional theater production. It's usually such a fun time, or at least a moving time, or an interesting time. This is making me want to look up like, what theater is happening around me? I always look when I go to new cities. So like when I went to Seattle recently, I went and looked up like every theater in the area and what shows were on, what was happening. And I swear this happens every time. Nothing was happening. I just have like the worst timing, and it's always like between 2 shows, or it's in the off season where nobody's performing anything. And I'm like, come on, man. I wanted to see a show. Anyway, that was fun. I hope you had fun. Bye.